Tuesdays begin the same way outside Millbrook, New York. 2 flatbed trucks turning off the county road at first light, gates already open, no one bothering to lock them anymore. The drivers could find this stretch of grass behind the old cider barn blind. They lower the tailgates, and 11 acres of quiet farmland receive another few thousand pounds of apples nobody wanted. Soft-shouldered, split-skinned, too far gone for the grocery aisle, too far gone even for the juice plant. The smell announces itself before the fruit ever hits the ground. Something sweet, already tipping into rot. For 11 months, a 24-year-old named Emily Carter has taken every load without complaint. She's never asked to be paid for it. If anything, she's asked for more. Cars slow down on the county road. Some stop outright, engines idling while their drivers take in the pile rising behind the barn like a rumor come to life. A neighbor once asked, half joking, whether she was burying something under there. Another suggested she call the extension office before the smell drew in every bear in the township. Emily doesn't answer these questions anymore. She just watches the pile grow and does something with it that not one passing driver has ever guessed. 18 months before that first truckload arrived, Emily was renting a 1-bedroom apartment 40 minutes outside Rochester, writing marketing copy for products she didn't care about, and spending her evenings scrolling through a life that felt borrowed from someone else. Then her grandmother, Ruth Carter, died and left her the only thing of real value she owned, 11 overgrown acres on the edge of Millbrook, a farmhouse with a porch that leaned like it was listening for something, a barn stiff with rust, and an orchard that hadn't seen a pair of pruning shears in over a decade. Emily drove out for the funeral. She stayed 3 extra days, then went home, gave notice at her job, and moved into the farmhouse with 4 boxes of clothes and no plan beyond patching the porch before winter. One of the region's largest growers, moving tens of thousands of tons of fruit a season into supermarkets and juice plants. Not all of it was sellable. Hail-stung apples, bruised drops, fruit that sat a day too long before picking. All of it cost real money to haul away. So when the orchard's operations manager, Grant Ashby, heard through a mutual acquaintance that the Carter place had empty land and a young owner in need of income, he made an offer that sounded almost too easy. Free apples, dumped on her acreage in exchange for saving him the hauling fees. Emily said yes before he'd finished the sentence. Grant blinked. Most landowners wanted money or wanted nothing to do with a fruit pile drawing yellow jackets for 3 townships around. Emily wanted neither. She just wanted the apples. Word travels fast in a town where everyone still waves at passing cars. Within a week, half of Millbrook had an opinion about the Carter girl and her rotten fruit. Her uncle called to ask if she'd lost her mind. An old classmate posted a photo of the growing pile online, captioned in a way that earned more laughing emojis than she probably intended. Even Grant admitted to a coworker a month in that he expected her to quit by the second delivery. She kept showing up anyway. To understand why Emily said yes so fast, you'd have to have known Ruth. Ruth never owned more than those 11 acres. She wasn't wealthy, wasn't known much outside Millbrook, where people remembered her mostly for the pies she brought to the church potluck, and for the fact that she never let a bruised apple go to compost if there was flesh worth saving. She used to pick through the ugly bin at the farmer's market, buying up the scarred, lopsided fruit no one else wanted, then spend the evening turning it into applesauce, pie filling, dried rings strung over the wood stove. Young Emily once asked her why she didn't just buy the nice apples like everyone else. Ruth's answer never changed. The fruit doesn't know it's supposed to be worth less. People decided that. Nature never did. It was the kind of thing a grandmother says while peeling apples on a Tuesday evening. Easy to forget for a decade, easy to remember all at once. Standing in a job she didn't love, staring at land she didn't know what to do with. Emily didn't have a business plan. She had a half-remembered sentence and 11 acres of empty grass. It would take most of a year, a dozen ruined batches, more sleepless nights than she could count, before that sentence became something she could hold in her hands. The plan, once she let herself have one, was simple in theory. Turn the rejects into vinegar. Apple cider vinegar had shelf life, real market value, and, crucially, didn't require the fruit to look presentable. Rot was almost an asset. Overripe apples carry more sugar, and sugar is exactly what fermentation runs on. In practice, nothing came easy. The first batch failed because she hadn't sanitized her equipment. Wild mold beat the yeast to the juice, leaving a gray film and a smell that drove her out of the barn for 2 days. The second batch fermented properly, turned cloudy and alive, and then stalled for a month because she'd sealed the containers too tightly, suffocating the acetic acid bacteria that actually convert alcohol into vinegar, organisms that need oxygen to work. The third batch, fermenting under a looser lid, finally turned, and then blew the cap off a forgotten jug at 11 at night, startling her so badly she dropped her flashlight. The fourth batch technically became vinegar. It was also cloudy, sharp in the wrong places, and inconsistent jug to jug because she'd mixed apples of different ages and sugar levels with no system at all. A retired winemaker 2 counties over, a man named Milo Sandquist, took pity on her confused post in an online fermentation forum and spent an hour on the phone explaining pH testing, the living culture called the mother, and the basic chemistry she'd been guessing her way through. The fifth batch was steadier but thin. The sixth batch was different. By then, she'd stopped guessing. She tested pH with strips instead of hoping. She logged which varieties fermented fastest. Tart drops from the orchard's oldest trees made a sharper, more complex vinegar than the sweeter modern rose. She learned to skim the mother carefully and keep a portion alive to seed the next batch, instead of starting from 0 every time. She filtered until the liquid ran clear. Tasting that sixth batch off a spoon on a cold October evening, she sat down on an overturned bucket and just breathed. Sharp, bright, sweet at the edges. Nothing like the harsh liquid from her early attempts. It tasted like something she could sell. She gave away the first proper batch before she ever sold a bottle. Small jars for neighbors, for an aunt, for a woman at the feed store who'd been kind to her during the mocking months. No charge. She wanted honest feedback, not her own bias talking. The feedback came back loud. A local chef named Owen Pruitt tried a jar passed along by a friend and called Emily directly, asking for more. She didn't have more yet, but the call pushed her to scale. She bought a dozen food-grade barrels, negotiated a steadier supply of rejects from Grant, registered a name, Millbrook Reserve Vinegar, and worked through the licensing maze required to sell food commercially. Owen became her first paying customer. He introduced her to a farm shop owner who introduced her to a specialty grocer who put a handful of her bottles on a shelf next to imported balsamics, selling for triple the price. Each relationship solved a problem the last one created. Owen's orders justified new equipment. The grocer's demand for consistent labeling forced her to formalize bottling. A regional distributor's interest in volume finally convinced her to hire her first employee, a former orchard hand who knew apples better than she did. 2 years in, the operation had outgrown the barn entirely. She converted an old equipment shed into a real production space, added 6 fermentation tanks, brought on a second employee. She kept the labels plain on purpose, the orchard's name, the harvest year, a line about where the apples came from, because she'd learned customers cared about the story as much as the taste. The orchard, once a source of endless rejects, became something closer to a partner. Grant started setting aside specific varieties at her request instead of dumping a random mix, and Halverson stopped paying to haul fruit 2 counties away. A favor to a young woman with no plan had turned into an arrangement that benefited them both. By year 3, Millbrook Reserve Vinegar sat on shelves in health food stores across 3 states, including that same specialty grocer that had taken her first small order, and the business had crossed into 6 figures a year, a number Emily still can't say out loud without laughing a little, remembering the neighbor who once joked about what she might be burying behind that barn.